Welcome, dear listener, to another journey through the stars. If you enjoy these galactic tales that guide you to peaceful slumber, please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more cosmic adventures to drift away to each night. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, some shadows reach farther than the light of 1,000 suns. Some secrets lie buried deeper than the ancient temples of forgotten worlds. Tonight we delve into perhaps the greatest mystery the galaxy has ever known. A tale of patience and power unlike any other. They say that on Naboo, when the moons align in perfect harmony, the waters of the lake country grow still as glass, reflecting the heavens above with such clarity that one cannot tell where the water ends and the cosmos begins. It was on such a night, generations ago, that a child was born. The midwives who attended the birth would later speak only in whispers of what they witnessed, for when the infant first opened his eyes, they did not reflect the starlight from above, but instead seemed to contain a storm brewing within, a tempest of ambition not yet realized. The ancient texts speak of a prophecy, fragments of which survive to this day. Words passed down through the ages, written in a time when the Sith and Jedi were merely philosophical differences rather than mortal enemies. The prophecy spoke of a shadow that would one day consume 1,000 suns, bringing darkness to every corner of the galaxy. But like all prophecies of old, its meaning remained shrouded in mystery, its warning unheeded. I discovered the first piece of this puzzle within the sealed archives of Theed Palace. A simple record of birth, unremarkable save for one detail that sent shivers down my spine. The time of birth, perfectly aligned with the moment the ancient prophecy foretold, the shadow would first draw breath in our realm. What forces guided the rise of Sheev Palpatine from a noble house on a peaceful world to become the most terrifying power the galaxy has ever known? What connections lie hidden between the ambitious senator, the shadowy Sith Lord, and the Emperor who would reign with an iron grip? And more chilling still, what truths lie behind the rumors that death itself could not contain his dark mastery of the Force? Join me now as we unravel the complete story of Palpatine, the mastermind who orchestrated the fall of the Republic, the corruption of Anakin Skywalker, and whose influence reached beyond death itself to threaten the galaxy once more. Our journey begins in the serene beauty of Naboo, where elegant spires reach toward the clouds and waterfalls cascade into crystal-clear lakes. This world of refinement and artistic splendor seems an unlikely birthplace for darkness. Yet beneath the polished marble and peaceful gardens, ambition and politics have always intertwined like vines, seeking dominance over a garden. I am a chronicler of forgotten histories, a seeker of truths that powerful forces would rather keep buried. For years I have studied the rise and fall of empires, the whispered legends of Sith and Jedi alike, searching for the complete tapestry of events that brought the galaxy to its knees not once, but twice under the same mastermind. The morning light filters through stained glass windows as I meet with Serene Venera, the eldest living archivist of the Naboo Royal Library. Her hands tremble slightly as she unlocks a cabinet that has remained sealed since the fall of the Empire. These records were restricted even before Palpatine declared himself Emperor, she tells me, her voice barely above a whisper, despite us being alone. House Palpatine was never among the most prominent noble families of Naboo, yet they maintained unusual connections to ancient houses that had long since lost their influence. The documents she reveals show a young Palpatine, his face unmarked by the dark side, his eyes alert and calculating even in youth. What strikes me most is not his appearance, but the absence of emotional connection in any of the images. Even surrounded by family, he stands slightly apart, observing rather than participating. There were incidents, Serene continues, glancing nervously toward the door. Unexplained accidents befalling those who opposed his early political ambitions. Nothing that could be traced back to him, of course. Palpatine was too careful, too patient, even then. As I examine the records, another pattern emerges. Teachers and mentors repeatedly noted his exceptional intelligence coupled with a concerning lack of empathy. More telling still are the gaps in the record, periods where the young Palpatine seemingly vanished from public life for months at a time, with no explanation offered. Those were the times he was with him, Serene says, her voice dropping even lower. With whom? I ask, though I suspect I already know the answer. His true master. Not the politicians he claimed to study under, but the one who taught him the ways of the dark side, the one whose name was struck from all records. The name Darth Plagueis appears in no official document, no historical record accessible to the public, yet the shadow of his existence looms over everything that followed. A Sith Lord who reportedly discovered the secret to creating life itself, to cheating death. The perfect mentor for an apprentice whose ambition would ultimately encompass not merely power, but immortality. As daylight fades across Theed, I prepare for the next stage of my investigation. The answers I seek lie not just in what has been recorded, but in what has been deliberately erased. Tomorrow I depart for Coruscant, where, amid the endless layers of the city planet, Palpatine's transformation from ambitious senator to galactic puppet master began. What I cannot yet know is whether uncovering these truths will bring understanding or only deeper mystery. For in the story of Palpatine, nothing is as it first appears, and every revelation seems to hide a deeper deception waiting to be unmasked. The journey to Coruscant feels heavy with purpose as my ship exits hyperspace to reveal the gleaming ecumenopolis that served as the heart of both Republic and Empire. Countless lights twinkle across its surface, each representing lives touched by the machinations of Palpatine. Somewhere amid those endless layers of civilization lie the threads I must follow to understand how a senator from a peaceful world orchestrated the fall of democracy itself. My first destination is the sealed archives beneath the former Senate building. Access to these records requires special clearance, which I obtained through connections with the New Republic Historical Commission. Their interest in my research is clear. They, too, wish to understand how liberty died with such thunderous applause. These archives smell of dust and forgotten promises. A droid attendant guides me through security protocols before leaving me alone with terminals containing senatorial records spanning decades. I begin with Palpatine's earlier speeches, noting the subtle shift in his rhetoric over time. Initially, he presented himself as a voice of reason and moderation, advocating for diplomatic solutions to the Republic's growing instability. The true danger to our Republic comes not from external threats, but from our failure to listen to each other, he once proclaimed, to thunderous approval. Even now, knowing what followed, his words carry a hypnotic quality, a soothing reassurance that all would be well if only his counsel were heeded. As I delve deeper into the records, I discover something unexpected, an encrypted file that seems out of place among routine senatorial proceedings. Hours pass as I work to break the encryption, my fingers growing stiff from the effort. When the file finally opens, I find myself staring at a fragment of a conversation between Palpatine and an unidentified figure whose holographic image has been deliberately corrupted. The pieces are in motion, Palpatine says, his voice lacking. the warmth it carried in public addresses. The Kaminoans have accepted the commission. When the time comes, the army will be ready. The timestamp on this recording predates the discovery of the clone army by nearly a decade. My heart races as the implications become clear. Palpatine had not merely responded to the separatist crisis, he had been preparing for it, perhaps even engineering it, years in advance. I download the file to my personal datapad, knowing this single piece of evidence reshapes our understanding of the Clone Wars entirely. It was never a desperate response to secession, but a carefully orchestrated conflict designed with a specific end in mind, the accumulation of emergency powers that would eventually transform Republic into Empire. As I prepare to leave the archives, I notice a shadow moving along the wall far too large to belong to the archive droid. Someone else is here, watching. I quicken my pace, making for the exit, while keeping my precious datapad close. The feeling of being observed intensifies, raising the hairs on my neck. Outside, the perpetual twilight of Coruscant's mid-levels envelops me. I blend into the crowd, constantly checking over my shoulder. My next destination is clear. I must speak with Lor San Tekka, the explorer and collector of Jedi lore, who may hold insights into how Palpatine concealed his Sith identity from the Jedi Order for so long. The further I dig into this mystery, the more dangerous my position becomes. Those who benefit from the obscured truth about Palpatine's rise would prefer these secrets remain buried. Yet I press on, driven by the conviction that understanding his path to power is crucial to preventing another such darkness from taking root in the galaxy. The truth about Palpatine awaits, scattered across the stars like the fragments of a shattered holocron. I have only just begun to piece them together. Lor San Tekka receives me in his modest dwelling on the outskirts of Coruscant's diplomatic sector. Age has weathered his face into a map of wrinkles, yet his eyes remain sharp, observant. His quarters overflow with artifacts and texts from across the galaxy, arranged in an organization system only he fully understands. I have been expecting someone to come asking these questions, he says, pouring us tea from a worn pot. The shadow of Palpatine stretches long across history, even now. I show him the encrypted file from the Senate archives. He studies it, with a frown deepening on his weathered face. This confirms what some of us suspected, he says finally. But it is merely the surface. The true depths of his deception go much further. From a locked chest, San Tekka retrieves a small pyramidal object, glowing with faint crimson light. A Sith holocron partially damaged. This was recovered from a hidden chamber beneath the Imperial Palace after the liberation of Coruscant. Most of its contents are corrupted, but fragments remain accessible. With reverent caution, he activates the device. A distorted holographic image flickers above it, a hooded figure speaking in tones too low to clearly discern. But certain phrases cut through the static with chilling clarity. The Jedi remain blind to our presence. Decades of preparation will soon bear fruit. My apprentice grows impatient, but he does not yet comprehend the scale of our design. This recording predates the invasion of Naboo, San Tekka explains. Palpatine was already deep in his Sith identity as Darth Sidious, already planning the downfall of the Jedi Order when he was merely a senator. My fingers tremble slightly as I take notes. And his master, Darth Plagueis? San Tekka's expression darkens. The relationship between Sith master and apprentice is always complex. In the case of Palpatine and Plagueis, doubly so. Evidence suggests Plagueis was a moon of significant wealth and influence in banking circles. He likely funded Palpatine's early political career, positioning his apprentice while remaining completely hidden. When did Palpatine move against him? The night before he was elected Supreme Chancellor, according to fragmented records. Always the opportunist, always striking at the perfect moment. As we speak, I notice a small device on Santeca's shelf begin to blink red. His expression shifts immediately from scholarly focus to alarm. "We are being monitored," he whispers, rising quickly. "You must leave through the back. Take this." He presses an old-fashioned data stick into my palm. "Coordinates to a place on Jakku where I have hidden more complete records. Trust no one with this information." The urgency in his voice leaves no room for questions. I slip out through a concealed door just as the sound of fists pounding at the main entrance echoes through the dwelling. Outside, I pull my hood low and blend with the flow of pedestrians, my heart racing with each step. Hours later, aboard a transport bound for the Outer Rim, I finally feel secure enough to examine the data stick. It contains not only coordinates but a partial journal apparently written by Sate Pestage, one of Palpatine's earliest confidants. The entries detail meetings between a young Palpatine and various influential figures across the galaxy, many associated with trade guilds that would later form the Separatist Alliance. The pattern becomes unmistakable. Palpatine was cultivating allies and enemies simultaneously, positioning each for their role in his grand design decades before the Clone Wars began. Tree stands out, describing Palpatine's return from a journey to the unknown regions bearing an artifact of some kind that he kept locked away from all eyes. Pestage writes of hearing strange whispers emanating from behind the locked door, and of Palpatine emerging looking haggard, but with eyes burning with newfound purpose. Whatever Palpatine discovered in those uncharted spaces changed him and perhaps sealed the fate of the galaxy. As my transport jumps to hyperspace, stars stretching into streaks of light, I wonder what ancient Sith knowledge he uncovered, and what darker secrets still await discovery. The barren landscape of Jakku stretches before me, endless dunes shifting under the merciless sun. This desolate world seems an unlikely place for hidden knowledge, yet Lord Santeca chose it precisely for its obscurity. Following his coordinates leads me to a small settlement of salvagers who regard outsiders with well-earned suspicion. An elderly woman named Duna finally acknowledges the authentication code provided by Santeca. She guides me to a simple hut where a section of flooring conceals a small chamber below. Inside, protected from sand and scavengers alike, rests a collection of journals, data records, and what appears to be personal effects from someone close to Palpatine during his rise to power. The Church of the Force has protected these records for years, Duna explains. Santeca believed they would be needed when the Shadow threatened to return. Hours blur into days as I immerse myself in these materials. A pattern emerges that initially seems to confirm what many historians have long suspected. Palpatine was groomed and positioned by his Sith master, Darth Plagueis, as a political puppet through whom the Sith would finally achieve their revenge against the Jedi. The journals describe a young Palpatine receiving precise instructions, political strategies, and even specific phrases to use in key speeches. Plagueis appears as the Grand Architect, using his wealth and influence to open doors for his apprentice while remaining safely hidden from Jedi detection. This narrative fits neatly with what the galaxy has assumed about Palpatine's rise. It provides a satisfying explanation for how a senator from a mid-rim world ascended so rapidly to the pinnacle of galactic power. It suggests Palpatine was merely the visible face of Plagueis' grand design, an ambitious but ultimately subordinate player in a game conceived by his master. Yet deeper in the records, contradictions begin to appear. Notes from meetings where Palpatine subtly altered his master's instructions. Communications with figures unknown to Plagueis. Small, seemingly insignificant deviations that, viewed collectively, reveal a far more disturbing truth. Palpatine was never merely the apprentice carrying out his master's vision. From the earliest days, he was constructing his own design within the framework of Plagueis' plan, patiently building toward the moment when he would no longer need his master's guidance or protection. Most revealing is a private journal entry, dated the night before Palpatine's election as Supreme Chancellor, the very night he supposedly murdered Plagueis in his sleep. My master believes tomorrow marks the culmination of our grand design. In his arrogance, he cannot see it marks only the beginning of mine. While he dreams of ruling from the shadows through me, I have prepared the galaxy for a far grander transformation. The Sith have thought too small for too long. Why manipulate a republic when one can become the Empire itself? This passage sends a chill through me unlike anything I've felt before. The calculated patience it reveals, the layers of deception, even within the deception, the true scope of Palpatine's ambition, suddenly stands revealed. He was never anyone's puppet. The master perceived himself as the chess player, never realizing he was himself a piece on Palpatine's board. As night falls over the Jakku settlement, I sit outside beneath unfamiliar stars, processing this revelation. The standard historical narrative about Palpatine's rise has been fundamentally incorrect. Understanding his true nature requires abandoning the comforting notion that he was merely carrying out another's design. Did you find what you were looking for? Duna asks, joining me with a cup of bitter desert tea. No, I reply honestly. I found something far more disturbing. Tomorrow I will continue to Coruscant, where the next phase of Palpatine's grand deception unfolded. But tonight, beneath this vast desert sky, I am haunted by the image of a young man with storm-filled eyes, already seeing the fall of republics. And Jedi alike, already patient enough to wait decades for his vision to unfold. Returning to Coruscant feels different now, the gleaming spires and endless cityscape taking on a more sinister aspect with my newfound understanding. I secure lodging in the mid-levels, away from official scrutiny, and make my way to the heavily restricted zone surrounding the former Imperial Palace. The New Republic maintains these areas as historical preservation sites, though whether to honor or caution remains ambiguous. With credentials from the Historical Commission, I gain access to sections of the palace once occupied by Emperor Palpatine himself. These grand halls, designed to intimidate with their vast scale and cold materials, now stand silent, a monument to hubris. Yet something feels alive beneath the surface, as though the very walls absorbed the dark energies once wielded here. My guide, a protocol droid programmed with historical data, recites approved information about the architecture and official functions. I listen with half attention, my focus drawn instead to barely perceptible details, a subtle pattern in the flooring leading to what appears to be a solid wall, inconsistencies in the spacing between ornamental pillars. What lies beyond that section? I ask, interrupting the droid's monologue. That area is sealed by order of the New Republic Security Council, it responds. No access is permitted to unauthorized personnel. After the tour concludes, I linger until security systems cycle 2. Their minimum staffing during the sleep cycle. Using slicing tools acquired through less than legitimate channels, I override the locking mechanism on the restricted section and slip inside. The air feels noticeably colder here, carrying a faint metallic tang. My portable light reveals a meditation chamber unlike any I've encountered in my studies of Force traditions. The walls are inscribed with ancient Sith language, symbols flowing in patterns designed to focus dark energies. At the center stands a simple stone plinth, its surface marred with what appears to be scorch marks radiating outward in a starburst pattern. I approach cautiously, feeling a distinct pressure against my consciousness, as though the very space resists my presence. Beneath the plinth, barely visible until I kneel to examine it, is a small access panel. My fingers tremble slightly as I activate it, revealing a hidden compartment containing a single data crystal of unfamiliar design. I quickly secure the crystal and retreat from the chamber, the oppressive atmosphere growing more intense with each moment. Back in the relative safety of my lodgings, I connect the crystal to a specialized reader designed for recovering damaged data. The information reveals itself in fragments, holographic recordings of Palpatine communicating with figures across the galaxy. In one, he speaks with a Kaminoan prime minister about specifications for a clone army. In another, he confers with a figure whose face remains obscured, but whose mechanical breathing has become infamous throughout the galaxy. Most disturbing is a recording that appears to be Palpatine alone, speaking perhaps to himself or to some unseen presence. The Jedi believe balance means the destruction of the Sith. Their narrow vision blinds them to the greater truth. The Force itself has shown me what lies beyond the veil of death. Immortality is not merely possible, it is inevitable for one who understands the full nature of the Force. This recording predates the Clone Wars, yet already Palpatine was contemplating not merely galactic domination, but eternal rule. The implications stagger me. Was the Empire itself merely a stepping stone toward some greater, more terrifying ambition? As dawn breaks over Coruscant, I stand at the viewing portal of my lodgings, watching the first light touch the endless cityscape. Somewhere in the vast galaxy, I know there must be more pieces to this puzzle, more evidence of Palpatine's true endgame. The next phase of my investigation must focus on the years following the Empire's formation, when Palpatine, no longer needing to maintain his benevolent facade, began to explore the darkest aspects of Sith knowledge. Rumors persist of secret facilities on remote worlds, of experiments too horrific even for Imperial records. And beneath all of this lies a question that increasingly disturbs my sleep. If Palpatine's ambitions extended beyond mere political power to the conquest of death itself, can we truly be certain that his defeat above Endor marked his final end? My search leads me to Scarif, once a secure Imperial facility, now a memorial to those lost in the early days of rebellion. The tropical paradise contrasts sharply with the knowledge of what occurred here, making the beauty seem almost obscene against the weight of history. A small research station now occupies what remains of the Imperial complex, dedicated to archiving recovered data from the facility's partially destroyed mainframe. The head archivist, a Syrian named Cloven, greets me with professional courtesy tinged with suspicion. Your request to access files pertaining to Emperor Palpatine's personal projects is unusual, he observes, leading me through climate-controlled corridors. Most historians focus on military developments or technological achievements. I'm interested in the man behind the throne, I explain, not just the empire he built. Ven's expression turns grave. And you seek darker knowledge than most. We've recovered fragments of communications about projects commissioned directly by Palpatine, overseen by scientists who answered only to him. The restricted archives require multiple security clearances. Inside, Ven activates a terminal with heavily encrypted access protocols. What we've reconstructed suggests Palpatine maintained facilities beyond Imperial oversight on worlds like Wayland, Biss, and other locations still unidentified. The projects conducted there shared a common focus: extending and transferring life essence. The terminal displays partial schematics for laboratory equipment designed for purposes I can scarcely comprehend. Cloning technology pushed to theoretical limits, devices for measuring and containing force energy, surgical facilities paired with ancient Sith alchemical chambers. This goes far beyond political power, I murmur, the implications becoming clear. Precisely. Ven gestures to another file. Most revealing is this communication between Palpatine and a chief researcher, dated just months before the Battle of Yavin. The message appears on screen, portions corrupted, but its essence chillingly clear. Your progress remains insufficient. The essence transfer protocol must be perfected before the vessel deteriorates further. Time grows short, and I will not be bound by the limitations of this form when destiny calls. A cold realization washes over me. Palpatine wasn't merely seeking extended life or even standard immortality. He was developing methods to transfer his consciousness to new bodies when old ones failed. There's more, Ven says quietly. After the Death Star's destruction, these projects received unprecedented resources and urgency. Whatever Palpatine sensed coming, it accelerated his timeline dramatically. Among the files is a heavily damaged recording showing Palpatine in his throne room aboard the second Death Star. He stands alone, speaking to no visible audience. Skywalker approaches as I have foreseen. Whether he falls or his father returns to the light matters little now. The contingencies are in place. Death is merely a doorway, one I have learned to pass through. The recording ends abruptly, but its implications echo with terrible clarity. Palpatine anticipated the possibility of his defeat at Endor. He had prepared for it. There's something you should see, Ven says, leading me to a separate terminal, recovered from an Imperial shuttle that crashed during the Jakku conflict. Most assume it was standard battle data, but we identified a transmission origin point in the unknown regions. The partial transmission contains coordinates and a single phrase. Operation Cinder proceeds. The contingency awaits its architect. I find myself gripping the terminal edge for support, the full horror of Palpatine's foresight becoming clear. The Emperor hadn't merely built an empire, he had planned for its potential fall and his own restoration. These coordinates, I ask, my voice unsteady, has anyone investigated them? The New Republic attempted to mount an expedition 3 years ago, Ven replies. The ships never returned. The region has since been classified as a navigational hazard zone. As I prepare to leave Scarif that evening, the setting sun turns the ocean to burning gold, a beauty that now seems like mere camouflage for darker truths beneath. Palpatine's machinations extended far beyond what even those closest to him understood. The death of his physical form at Endor may have been merely a transition, not an ending. My investigation must now turn to the unknown regions, where the final piece of this horrifying puzzle awaits. The true scope of Palpatine's contingency is still unfolding, decades after his supposed death. Finding passage to the unknown regions proves challenging. Most legitimate pilots refuse to venture beyond established hyperspace lanes, citing navigational hazards and disturbing stories of ships lost to phenomena science cannot explain. Eventually, I secure transport aboard the Stellar Whisper, a modified Corellian freighter captained by a Duros named Nilo, who specializes in journeys others consider suicidal. I don't ask why someone wants to reach places they shouldn't, Nilo tells me as we prepare for departure. But those coordinates you provided, they're in a sector even smugglers avoid. The Empire maintained automated beacons there, warning all ships away under threat of immediate destruction. The journey takes us through hyperspace routes, so unstable that Nilo must make constant adjustments, his six-fingered hands dancing across the navigation controls with practiced precision. After the third day, the stars outside become unfamiliar, constellations not documented in any Republic astrogation chart. "We're approaching the outer marker now," Nilo announces. Beyond this point, conventional sensors become unreliable. Something about the cosmic radiation in this region interferes with standard technology. As we drop out of hyperspace, the viewport reveals a sight that sends ice through my veins, a massive nebula stretching across the starfield, its swirling colors forming patterns that seem almost deliberately arranged. Within its heart, areas of absolute darkness create a shape, reminiscent of ancient Sith emblems. "That's not natural," Nilo whispers, all professional detachment gone from his voice. Our sensors detect a small planetoid at the coordinates provided, orbiting a dying star whose feeble light barely penetrates the surrounding nebula. As we approach, massive structures become visible on the surface, ancient temples or fortresses of black stone, their architecture unlike anything documented in known space. "I'll maintain orbit," Nilo says firmly. "Whatever's down there, I want no part of it." The ship's only shuttle barely accommodates me and the minimal equipment I bring. Descending through the thin atmosphere, I'm struck by an increasingly oppressive sensation, as though the very air resists my presence while simultaneously pulling me toward the surface. The shuttle's systems fail during the final approach, forcing a rough landing that damages one thruster beyond repair. Around me stretches a landscape of sharp black rock and deep chasms from which pale blue mist rises like ghostly breath. The temperature hovers just above freezing, though no ice forms on the jagged stones. The largest structure looms a kilometer away, its entrance flanked by massive statues, weathered beyond recognition. As I approach, the sense of being watched intensifies, though sensors detect no life forms. The entrance bears inscriptions in ancient Sith, portions of which I recognize from my research. The eternal throne awaits the one who conquers death. Inside, the architecture defies conventional understanding. Corridors shift subtly when not directly observed. Chambers appear larger from within than their external dimensions should allow. Throughout the complex, I discover evidence of recent occupation advanced technology integrated with ancient stone, power systems still humming with energy. In what appears to be a central chamber, I find what can only be described as a laboratory, combined with a ritual space. Cloning cylinders line the walls, most shattered but a few intact, their fluid cloudy with suspended material. At the center stands a throne of black stone, surrounded by equipment designed for transfer and containment of energy. A partially intact databank yields fragmented files, including a recording that chills me to my core. Palpatine's voice, unmistakable despite distortion. The body is merely a vessel, temporary and ultimately disposable. True power lies in the transference of consciousness, in the ability to shed one form for another when necessity demands. The Jedi feared this knowledge, called it unnatural. They lacked the vision to see that nature itself is merely another boundary to be transcended. Further files reveal the true horror of Palpatine's contingency. Not merely clone bodies awaiting his essence, but a plan spanning generations. References to a final order hidden within the unknown regions, growing in secret while the galaxy believed the Empire defeated. Most disturbing are references to bloodlines, genetic materials preserved for some purpose tied to Palpatine's ultimate return. As I prepare to document this discovery, the structure around me seems to come alive. Lights activate in sequence along corridors I haven't explored. The sensation of being observed intensifies to near physical pressure. From the depths of the complex, a sound emerges neither mechanical nor organic, but something between a whisper and a distant scream. I abandoned further exploration, retreating to my shuttle with the recovered data. As I lift off from this accursed world, I glance back to see lights throughout the complex pulsing in rhythmic patterns, as though the entire structure has awakened to my intrusion. Something was set in motion here, years before the fall of the Ba'a Empire. Something that may still be unfolding, waiting for conditions Palpatine calculated decades in advance. The implications terrify me beyond anything I've encountered in my investigation. The return journey from the unknown regions passes in a blur of hyperspace and uneasy sleep filled with dreams of whispering voices. Captain Nilo maintains a tense silence, his usual swagger replaced by vigilant attention to our surroundings, as though expecting pursuit from the darkness we left behind. Upon reaching known space, I make immediate contact with a network of trusted allies gathered during my investigation. Knowledge this dangerous cannot remain with a single keeper. We arrange to meet on Chandrila, now a center of New Republic governance and sufficiently public to discourage the kind of clandestine interference I've encountered throughout my journey. The gathering includes Serene Venera, the Naboo archivist, who first showed me Palpatine's early records, Clo Ven from the Scarif archives, a former Imperial officer named Rel Tanis who served in Palpatine's palace guard, and most surprisingly, an aging Jedi historian who introduces himself simply as Coven. We meet in a private chamber within the University of Chandrila's historical wing, security protocols engaged to prevent surveillance. The evidence I've gathered is displayed holographically before them, fragments of a puzzle now taking its complete shape. I serve the Empire loyally, Tanis says, his Imperial accent still pronounced despite years in exile. But what you've uncovered confirms suspicions. I developed during my service in the Imperial Palace. There were chambers no one was permitted to enter, even elite guards. Visitors arriving in unmarked shuttles during ship hours, beings concealed beneath robes who moved with unnatural gaits. The dark side of the Force allows for many abilities, some consider unnatural, Coven adds, his voice carrying the weight of personal knowledge. The ancient Sith were obsessed with cheating death. Palpatine's interest in these techniques was not merely academic. The energies I sensed in his presence suggested experimentation far beyond theoretical research. Serene examines the records from the Unknown Regions facility. These genetic markers, she says, pointing to a sequence. They match records of Palpatine's bloodline from Naboo. He was creating vessels of his own genetic material. Not just vessels, Clo Ven interjects. Potential hosts. The technology suggests preparation for essence transfer, a technique mentioned in Sith texts, so ancient and forbidden that even the Empire kept them secured in special vaults. The full picture emerges through our collective analysis. Palpatine had created an elaborate contingency spanning decades and light years. The Empire itself was merely one phase of a far grander design. The Death Stars, the military might, the oppression, all were secondary to his true goal, achieving immortality through the dark side of the Force. The most disturbing element, Coven says, his weathered face grave, is the potential connection to the disturbances many Force sensitives have reported since the Battle of Jakku. Something awakened in the unknown regions. Something that carries the same psychic signature as Palpatine, yet distorted as though viewed through fractured glass. Could he have succeeded? I ask, the question that haunts me. Could his essence have transferred at the moment of his death on the Death Star? The silence that follows speaks volumes. None wish to contemplate the implications, yet all recognize the possibility. There's something else, Tanis says finally. During my service, I overheard Palpatine speaking of contingencies beyond death. He mentioned a final apprentice who would arise to complete what he began. Not Vader, someone else, someone yet to come. As night falls over Chandrila, our discussion turns to what actions we can take with this knowledge. Traditional authorities would dismiss such evidence as speculation or worse, the ravings of conspiracy theorists. The New Republic, eager to move beyond the shadow of the Empire, has little interest in investigating potential threats from a defeated enemy. We must preserve this knowledge, Coven decides, distribute it among trusted keepers across the galaxy. Should the shadow of Palpatine truly return, future generations must have warning of what they face. Before we part ways, Coven approaches me privately, his age-lined face solemn in the dim light. "There is one final piece you should know," he says quietly. Palpatine's interest in the Skywalker bloodline was never fully explained. My research suggests he viewed them as more than simply powerful Force users to corrupt or destroy. They represented something fundamental to his ultimate plan, a genetic key of sorts. Watch for connections between his legacy and theirs. Where those bloodlines intersect, his true purpose may finally be revealed. With this warning echoing in my thoughts, I prepare to continue my investigation. The trail now leads to Jakku, where the final battle between Empire and Rebellion played out, and where, perhaps, the first stage of Palpatine's posthumous contingency was set in motion. The galaxy believes it has left the Emperor behind in history. My discoveries suggest a far more troubling possibility that Palpatine's greatest deception may have been convincing the galaxy he could truly die at all. The journey to Jakku brings me full circle, back to the desert world where fragments of Palpatine's journals first revealed his true nature. This time, I come with greater purpose, guided by coordinates found in the Unknown Regions facility, referencing an Imperial excavation site on Jakku's far side. The desert planet appears unremarkable, its surface scarred by the final confrontation between New Republic and Imperial forces. Star Destroyer wreckage protrudes from dunes like the skeletal remains of extinct leviathans. Beneath this mundane desolation lies something the Empire considered valuable enough to defend to its last breath. My guide is a local salvager named Urgel, his skin weathered by years under Jakku's merciless sun. He regards the coordinates with obvious apprehension. "The Plaintive Hand Plateau," he says, voice dropping. "Salvagers who venture there don't return. Imperial defenses still active, they say. Others claim it's haunted by something worse." Journey takes us beyond established scavenging routes into territories where strange magnetic anomalies interfere with navigation equipment. By the second day, we must proceed on foot, climbing ridges of rust-colored stone until the plateau comes into view. What awaits is not a conventional facility, but a massive excavation site centered around what appears to be an ancient temple partially buried in the desert. Imperial machinery, abandoned but remarkably intact, surrounds the structure. Energy readings indicate automated systems still functioning despite years of neglect. "This is as far as I go," Urgel announces firmly. "Double my payment won't make me set foot on that cursed ground." Approaching alone, I discover the excavation penetrates deep below the surface, revealing architecture unlike anything in Republic records. The designs incorporate elements from ancient Sith temples, yet with configurations I've never encountered in any historical text. At the excavation's heart stands a doorway of black stone, its surface etched with symbols that seem to shift when viewed peripherally. Most disturbing is the sensation emanating from beyond a cold malevolence that seems to reach out, probing for weakness or fear. The Imperial records recovered from the site's command center are fragmentary but revealing. Operation Cinder, the protocol for the Empire's scorched earth tactics following Palpatine's death, was merely the visible aspect of a more complex contingency. While the galaxy witnessed the Empire's vindictive destruction, a select few followed encoded instructions directing them to specific sites across the galaxy, including this temple on Jakku. One recovered transmission sent to the facility shortly after Palpatine's death at Endor contains a simple message in an encryption used exclusively by Palpatine himself. The eclipse begins. Prepare the way! Most revealing is a holographic recording showing Imperial archaeologists working within the temple. They uncover a chamber containing a device of clearly Sith design, a pyramid-shaped holocron that pulses with crimson energy. As they activate it, the recording abruptly ends, yet data logs indicate a massive energy surge at that exact moment, followed by automated transmissions to coordinates in the unknown regions. The implications crystallize with terrible clarity. Palpatine had discovered ancient Sith knowledge relating to essence transfer and immortality. He had prepared clone bodies to receive his consciousness should his original form perish. And most chilling of all, he had positioned this fail-safe technology across the galaxy, ensuring that when he fell at Endor, the mechanisms for his return were already in motion. Further data logs reference Project Resurrect and the Final Order, along with calculations for hyperspace coordinates leading beyond the known galaxy. Whatever emerged from this temple after Palpatine's death, it traveled to the hidden reaches where something awaited reawakening. The shadow that consumed 1,000 suns was never truly extinguished. It merely retreated, patient as always, preparing for its moment to eclipse the galaxy once more. Standing under Jakku's night sky, staring at the stars where the Death Star once orbited Endor, I recall the fragment of prophecy discovered at the beginning of my journey. The shadow that would consume 1,000 suns. Only now do I understand the full meaning. It was never about Palpatine's rise to power or the darkness of his empire. It foretold a shadow that would return even after apparent destruction, engineered by a mind that had calculated every possibility, including defeat. The true horror of Palpatine's genius reveals itself not in what he accomplished in life, but in what he set in motion to achieve after death. The perfect circle of his design, spanning decades and anticipating every potential obstacle, speaks to a patience and foresight almost beyond comprehension. As I prepare to depart Jakku, I cannot shake the growing certainty that Palpatine's story did not end above Endor. The dark side offered him pathways to abilities many consider unnatural, and he had decades to prepare for contingencies others could scarcely imagine. Somewhere in the galaxy, his influence persists, whether through technological means, through the dark side of the Force, or through some combination even more insidious than either alone. The shadow grows longer as the light fades, and in that darkness something ancient and patient watches and waits. My findings from Jakku compel me to seek out the most dangerous source of all, someone who encountered Palpatine in his final moments aboard the Death Star. The journey takes me to a remote settlement on Tatooine, where rumors suggest a solitary figure with connections to both Skywalker and Palpatine has taken refuge. The homestead sits isolated against the backdrop of twin suns, a humble dwelling belying the significance of its occupant. Luke Skywalker has not been seen publicly for years, his whereabouts a closely guarded secret. That I found him speaks to the network of allies I've cultivated rather than any failure in his concealment. He receives me with wary eyes that have seen too much. Age has weathered his face, Yet the power he carries remains palpable, like static electricity raising the hairs on my arms. "You've been asking dangerous questions across the galaxy," he says, offering simple hospitality, a cup of blue milk and a seat in the shade. "Questions about Palpatine?" I present my findings without embellishment. To my surprise, he listens intently, his expression darkening with each revelation until I conclude with the evidence from Jakku and the Unknown Regions facility. "I sensed something," he finally admits, eyes distant with memory. "In the throne room, when the Emperor fell, not just his death, but something else, a transference, a passage." I told myself it was simply the dark side energies dispersing, but part of me always knew there was more. Luke rises, pacing the small confines of his dwelling. "The Sith have always sought ways to cheat death. Palpatine's obsession with immortality was evident in everything from his experiments to his fascination with my father and later with me. He didn't just want apprentices, he wanted vessels. The cloning facilities I discovered, I venture. Could they have succeeded? The dark side allows for possibilities beyond natural understanding," Luke replies carefully. "Transferring consciousness requires tremendous power and preparation. Few, if any, have ever truly succeeded. But if anyone could have mastered such forbidden knowledge..." He doesn't need to complete the thought. Palpatine's decades of planning, his unparalleled mastery of the dark side, his access to ancient Sith. Knowledge all suggest a terrifying possibility. "There's something I haven't shared with anyone," Luke says, his voice dropping. "A disturbance I've sensed growing for years. A presence in the Force that feels like an echo of Palpatine, yet different somehow. Diminished, but strengthening. I've searched for its source, but it remains elusive, shifting through the unknown regions like a phantom." He retrieves an old holocron from a hidden compartment, its design unlike the Sith or Jedi variants I've encountered. "This contains my research on essence transfer and Sith immortality techniques. I've spent years studying what Palpatine might have accomplished. The holocron's contents confirm my worst fears. Luke's research, combined with Jedi knowledge and his own Force sensitivity, suggests Palpatine had indeed found a method to transfer his consciousness at the moment of death. The process would have been traumatic, leaving the essence damaged and weakened, requiring years to regain strength. The most disturbing aspect," Luke continues, "is the bloodline connection. Palpatine believed certain genetic lineages had special properties in the Force. My family, his own, possibly others. I think of Coven's warning about the intersection of bloodlines. He was searching for a perfect vessel. Yes, not just a clone which would deteriorate under the power of his essence, but someone with both the genetic capability to contain his consciousness and the natural Force sensitivity to amplify it." As daylight fades over the desert, Luke shares one final revelation. "There have been rumors, whispers through the Force, of a child born with unusual power. I've tried to locate this child, fearing what it might represent." "Palpatine's contingency," I whisper. "A vessel of his bloodline. The ultimate deception," Luke agrees. "Not just surviving death, but returning with a claim to legitimacy through blood, a perfect circle of manipulation spanning generations." The implications stagger me. Palpatine's meticulous planning extended beyond politics, beyond even his empire, to the very continuation of his essence through carefully orchestrated bloodlines. "What can be done?" I ask. "If he returns?" Luke's expression hardens with resolve. "The same that has always been done when darkness rises. Light rises to meet it. Balance finds a way, though rarely the way we expect. As I prepare to depart, Luke places a hand on my shoulder. Your chronicle of Palpatine's rise and machinations serves a greater purpose than you know. When the shadow returns, and I fear it will, we will need those who understand its true nature. Keep seeking the truth, but be wary. His agents still move through the galaxy, protecting the pathways of his return. I leave Tatooine with the weight of revelation. The third open loop in this mystery now stands resolved, more terrifying than I could have imagined. Palpatine's story did not end at Endor. The most insidious aspect of his grand design was only beginning a patient, calculated return through bloodlines and essence, awaiting the perfect moment to reclaim the galaxy he had never truly surrendered. But stars stretch into streaks of light as my ship makes the final jump toward home. After months of investigation across the galaxy, I return not with triumphant answers, but with the somber weight of revelation. Palpatine's story encompasses far more than the rise and fall of an ambitious politician turned tyrant. It reveals a patient, calculating mind that orchestrated not just the transformation of Republic to Empire, but laid groundwork for something far more terrible. The galaxy sleeps peacefully tonight, unaware of shadows gathering in distant corners. The new Republic flourishes, trade routes expand, and worlds rebuild from decades of imperial oppression. Few wish to contemplate that the architect of their previous suffering might have transcended death itself. Even fewer would believe the evidence I've gathered, pointing to contingencies set in motion long before Palpatine's apparent demise. My quarters on Chandrila overlook the capital city, its lights twinkling like earthbound stars beneath a clear night sky. I have arranged for my findings to be secured in multiple locations across the galaxy, entrusted to those who understand their significance. Should the darkness return, future generations will not face it blindly. The data pad before me contains my complete chronicle, the culmination of a journey that began with a simple historical curiosity and ended with the most disturbing revelation of our time. I title it simply, The Shadow's Contingency, the True Legacy of Palpatine. In the morning, I will deliver copies to my network of trusted allies. For now, I stand at my window, contemplating the patterns that have emerged through my investigation. The perfect symmetry of Palpatine's design spans not just years, but generations. His manipulation of the Skywalker bloodline, his creation of the clone army, his orchestration of the Clone Wars, his transformation of Republic to Empire, all were merely preludes to a grand design that extended beyond death itself. Most chilling is the patience such a plan required. While others sought immediate power or glory, Palpatine moved invisible pieces across a board that encompassed the entire galaxy, always thinking decades ahead, always prepared to sacrifice any position for ultimate victory. His apparent defeat at Endor was merely another calculated move in a game still unfolding. As I gaze at the peaceful city below, I cannot help but wonder how many other planets rest easy tonight, unaware that the galaxy's greatest predator may be circling once more from the shadows. The warning signs are there for those who know where to look. Disturbances in the Force, reported by the few remaining Jedi, unusual activities in the unknown regions, political movements that echo Imperial ideologies under new banners. The ultimate irony lies in how thoroughly Palpatine understood his enemies. He knew the new Republic would be eager to move forward, to rebuild rather than hunt shadows. He knew the remaining Jedi would be too few and scattered to mount an effective vigilance. He knew the galaxy's collective desire to believe in his Destruction would blind them to evidence of his return. In this understanding of hope itself as a vulnerability to exploit lies, perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Palpatine's genius. He did not just master the dark side of the Force or the machinery of political power, he mastered the psychology of entire civilizations, turning their greatest virtues into weaknesses through which his influence could endure.